You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. Volatility Views is brought to you by MIAX, one of the fastest, most efficient trading platforms in the world. MIAX is proud to bring you SPIKES Volatility products. SPIKES options and futures are traded on the SPIKES Volatility Index, SPIKE, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction, all for ultra-low exchange fees. It's volatility reimagined. Learn more about spikes at myaxoptions.com/spikes. Options and futures involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. Volatility Views is also brought to you by Matrix Executions, LLC, an agency broker-dealer focused on best execution in trading workflow automation. A technology-driven firm, Matrix is led by trading pioneers with decades of experience designing and building best-in-class solutions for options markets. Matrix connects to all domestic exchange venues and multiple international exchanges and serves both institutional and individual clients. For more information on Matrix Executions, LLC, please visit matrixexecutions.com. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That music means it is Friday. It is noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. Do you know where volatility is? Well, let's find it together. It is time for Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever scintillating, at least we hope so, Options Insider Radio Network. Reminding you out there, we've seen a whole bunch of new listeners joining all the different programs we have on the network. So wherever you're listening to this, keep rating and reviewing. It does help new folks. There's a lot of people out there who don't really have a clue what the heck volatility is, who are investing in these things. So let's collectively try to help them. Keep rating and reviewing it so new folks can continue to discover this program and all the fun that goes along with the network. Of course, keep sending those questions and comments in too. We do love to hear from you guys and gals out there. Let's see who we're hearing from on the old program today. I must say, I am very surprised because joining us once again in the Matrix hot seat from deep in the heart of now frozen Texas, we have the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com, by way of Carmen Line, by way of a land with no power and no utilities of any way, shape, or size. Mr. Meatball, welcome back to the program. I have to say, I did not expect to hear from you this week, sir. And I guess I am still not hearing from you. Are you there, Mr. Meatball? Oh, no. The technology gods have smoked.
Is Texas turned into a third world country?
It sounds like it from the issues going on there. We'll tell you what. We'll work to see if we can recover the meatball there. But that other voice we're also hearing there is, of course, none other than our friend holding down the MIAX hot seat this week, doing a bit of double duty on the show. He was on not too long ago. He liked it so much. He's back again, Mr. Russell Rhoads from Loyola University, by way of EQ Derivatives, by way of a volatility bookstore near you. Mr. Rhoads, welcome back to Volatility Views, sir.
Always happy to be here. Always absolutely thrilled to be here. I'll your utility infielder. Whenever you need somebody and there's 90 minutes till the program, I'm your guy.
All right, let's see if this technology gods are smiling upon him now. The second time is the charm. Mr. Texas Meatball / Brisket, are you there, sir?
Yeah, I'm here, and it's pretty amazing. You know, volatility stops for no man. No, it will not stop for me. And I am here to talk vol with no water. I have no water. I do have power. So, I'm here in Texas picking up snow to flush my toilets, which is kind of what I feel is like it kind of happened to the VIX this morning, but it's since recovered.
Well, there we go. Not the analogy I don't think any of us expected, but an interesting and illuminating one nonetheless, as we head right on into the Volatility Review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Vol Review, the portion of the show where we do exactly what it sounds like. We review the week that was and indeed still is from vol trading and trending and analysis and all sorts of perspectives. And coming into showtime, as Mark alluded to, we're seeing a little bit of the worm potentially turning out there. When we first started prepping for the show not too long ago, very different volatility environment than we're in right now. The markets were mostly green then. Looks like we had a nice little up day on our hands, and we had the volatility markets taking a bit of a break, a bit of a reprieve. VIX was shy of the 21 handle, around 20 3/4 when we were starting to prep for the show. A lot of that has changed. Spikes was at a similar level, a little bit shy, right at or a little bit below a 21 as well. Coming in to kick off the show now, a little bit different regime. VIX cash at about a 22. To kick off the show, puts it up about 1.25 points from where it was this time last week. Spikes at about 22.5, so Spike's starting to get a little bit of that juicy premium in there as well. That puts it up not quite 1.5 points, about 1.25 points from last show. And VVIX getting frothy again at about 118.5. That puts it down only slightly, about 2.5 points from where it was last week. So vol starting to get a little bit of a boost, a little bit of a lift coming in to showtime. Of course, last week we saw right after the show, we were debating whether it would close below 20. And of course it did right after our show last week for the first time in about a year. So that sent vol twit and fin twit, all of Twitter, pun intended, out there. Everyone talking about what this means for the future. VIX finally closing below 20 for the first time in a year. Is this a sign of things to come? So we thought we'd ask you that same question. Right before the show, this went live. We said, quite frankly, will VIX close below or above 20 a month from now? We have that poll live over there right now. You can do it listening live. We have it set up so you folks listening to the podcast after the fact can play as well. At Options is the place to go to make your voice heard. But a lot of stuff popping off. Let's go back out to the land of Texas, the land of melting snow and fluctuating power before the technology gods strike him down again. Mr. Meatball, a lot popping off over there this week. I'm sure you had other things on your mind besides vol, but what was coming across your vol radar this week, sir?
I mean, I think the big thing was just the spread between Spike's March futures and the Spikes and VIX March futures and the VIX. There is just coming into expiration, Feb expiration, which was this week. There was, over a 4-point spread between the two. And so what we've seen is that, the VIX is actually up week over week. From Thursday to Thursday, VIX was up and all the ETPs were down. The March future was down. There is a lot of pressure in the futures complex for these futures to fall, even if the VIX holds up. They were really, really frothy. And, we saw the fruits of that because you're right. Like VIX is now flat after being down huge, and all the vol ETPs, so like VXX and UVXY and the VIX futures are all still down on the day. decently down. So that's really what's been on my radar, because that complex just got way out of whack.
Looks like it did. Folks are starting to capitulate. They're dumping, looks like, some puts to the downside. I had some vestigial below market bids for VIX puts. Looks like they're starting to get filled out there. So folks are starting to capitulate and trying to unload some VIX downside puts. Mr. Once and Future Dr. VIX. A lot going on out there in the world of vol this week. What is lighting up your tapes? Hopefully you guys out in the hinterlands of Chicago, you guys at least have power, sir.
I've got power. I've just got stuff melting on my roof and coming in through the ceiling instead of going off the side of the roof. And a very grumpy roofer whining about having to go up there and do his job. That's my biggest problem. But I can flush a toilet, no problem. And I just want to let Mark know that don't use the yellow snow down there for anything. It's not flavored. So as far as, Mark kind of beat me to it. That spread narrowed fairly quickly. It really started to narrow on Tuesday. We had the Monday holiday, and it took about a week, or week over week. If you compared Tuesday to Tuesday, the spread was a little bit wider than 5 points for March versus spot. And then on Tuesday, the day before the February contract went off the board, it already was narrowing down. Now it's like under 3. And it's a function of both. It's a function of the index going up a little bit quicker than what the futures were doing. But then the futures, like Mark said today, the futures kind of narrowing themselves or working their way lower relative to the index. So they're doing what they're supposed to do. They start to come together. It's just maybe happening a little bit quicker than normal, a little bit farther out than expiration than normal, but the spread was always a lot wider than normal once March became the front month. So I guess we should kind of expect what's going on. You just don't know if it's going to come from the futures dropping or the index jumping up to catch up.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times I assume the index is going to catch up, but that spread was just so crazy wide that 3 points seems tight, but that's actually pretty wide for a VIX future with 30 days out to be trading above. Normally, I would be looking at that spread at about 2 points would be about normal. In real low vol environments, it'll be 1.5 points. But the fact that it's still 3, I'm still kind of licking my chops, and I think there's still probably another point of downside in those VIX futures, or the VIX index has to pop. But I think there's at least a point.
It does seem to be that way. Before we keep going any farther, breaking down the futures really quickly, I got to touch on this because it is the story that is now captivating the entire financial world. Just a few minutes ago, about 15 minutes ago, we saw Bitcoin pass the 1 trillion dollar amount there in terms of market cap. That seemed outlandish. In fact, we had a poll about this a little over a month ago, January 11th. A bunch of you voted in it. And we asked you, only kind of half jokingly, which one will hit 1 trillion market cap first, Tesla or Bitcoin? It was hot and heavy. When you ask anything about Tesla and Bitcoin, people tend to want to weigh in and share their opinions. And Tesla ended up eking it out about 57.6% versus Bitcoin, 42.4%. I guess everyone who voted in that one kind of undervalued the power of the Bitcoin hype machine. Also, the fact that Tesla, right after we did this, Tesla and Bitcoin kind of got together with Musk announcing they were gobbling up about $1.5 billion. So I guess maybe if you add the Tesla hype to Bitcoin, which is kind of what happened, that ended up accelerating it past the 1T level. Tesla, as I recall, is still around a similar market cap to where it was. It was around 760 billion as we did this poll. I think it's about 750 now. So it hasn't changed that much. But Bitcoin on the rampage. Mark, I know you're watching crypto a lot more these days with the folks over there at Gemini. What are your thoughts on this 1T threshold, sir, for Bitcoin?
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and I've got my Genesis Vol guys that I'm able to talk to about these types of things. But, I think the hilarious thing is Tesla has now made more in a month by buying Bitcoin than has ever made in selling cars in 10 years. So,
that's a great point. Yes.
so pretty amazing move by Mr. Musk. And then, Yeah, there's a lot going on in crypto. It's exploding, but it's pulling Ethereum with it and some of these other ones. I mean, Dogecoin could go to 50 cents or $1. I mean, it's just a meme based. It's a little nonsensical, but for people that are saying, we're piling up all this debt and we're gonna have rampant inflation, that money is moving into Bitcoin instead of gold. And you see big institutions coming out and saying, yeah, you know what, we're buying Bitcoin as part of our portfolio because we have to. So you're seeing, some pretty decent mainstream adoption of some of these coins. Now, do I think that Bitcoin's going to stay over $1 trillion? No, it's going to fall back. But will it be over $1 trillion maybe in 10 years? Or 2 trillion in 10 years? Sure, totally could be. Same thing with some of these other cryptos, where as we see mainstream adoption, you're going to see them rally. Now, that said, I think this is probably a little over frothy. I would love to, I want to trade some options on these. It would be great if we could have some sort of, U.S. equity options on some of these coins, because the implied volatilities are through the roof. If you want to see implied volatilities on some of these, you can go to Genesis Volatility and see the whole complex. It is bananas, and how high the vol is in Bitcoin, and you're seeing it flow through to some of the major crypto stocks like Riot Blockchain or Mara. I mean, Mara has 3 employees, and it's worth $100 billion now because of the way they mine Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's just insanity. And you're right. I think that is one of the greatest crimes we've seen. Maybe not crime, missed opportunities. Bitcoin's rallied from around 3,000 to over 50,000 with no real appreciable U.S. options market for. I know there's a few outlets. There's your Ledger X's, and there's, of course, what CME just launched not too long ago. Those options over at CME are A, fairly new, and B, extremely beefy. Those are really big for your average retail client out there. So they're not really getting a lot of traction either. So if you're a U.S. options trader, you're kind of stuck tunneling into a place like Deribit with a VPN, which violates all their terms of service. And it's not really the way you want to have your money allocated to a place where you're violating their terms and have to tunnel in. So it's terrible that this huge move in the underlying has happened. How great would it have been to have options on all of this? And yet for a lot of our audience, unless you're out there, a holder out there holding the underlying coin itself, not so much on the options front, which is a shame. Mr. Once and Future Dr. VIX, it's kind of inescapable, the Bitcoin story. It certainly is a volatility story, as Mark alluded to. We talk about it on our Crypto Rundown show every Monday. We use some of those Genesis analytics because they are pretty fascinating. And the hourly vol out there in Bitcoin has been north of 100 for some time. It has gotten over 150, even to the 200% range. So Bitcoin is totally a volatility story as well. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this? Some might say hyperbolic, some might say overdue landmark here of crossing 1 trillion, sir.
Yeah, I've been doing the same thing with Bitcoin, and I'm just still doing it, not falling too much for the trap that I think it's gone farther than it should. For about 5 years now, I've just every time I get paid, I put a couple $100 into Bitcoin and just leave it there. And I think that's the way that you approach something that's gonna have periodic bubbles, but as you just aptly put, it's over. I think Mark just actually put it's over $1 trillion right now. There's a good chance it'll be under $1 trillion at some point. In the next, probably in the near future. But I'll bet you in the long term, it's going to be well over $1 trillion. So. I think it's a good long-term thing that you just try not to get too caught up in you can be excited about it every once in a while, but watching it from day to day is gonna make you pull the trigger and maybe get out of it when you probably shouldn't get out of it. I also, I get a lot of students that ask me questions about this thing. I basically say there's a bunch of them right now. There were a bunch of internet stocks. There were 100 auto companies at one time. There were a bunch of PC companies at one time. And eventually it all narrows down to a handful of winners. And, although when you look at it and look at the price appreciation, it's probably difficult to step up and buy Bitcoin right now relative to some of the other ones. But in the long run, that's probably, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then maybe a couple of other ones that I don't want to start trying to guess on are going to be the survivors. And I think that's what you've got to do is figure out which ones you think are going to be the survivors. Don't overly worry about, use the old school dollar cost averaging and you'll kind of be fine with it. And don't put your whole life savings in it.
So you heard it here first. Russell Rhodes says buy Dogecoin, hand over fist, put the life savings in Doge. I think that if I read between the lines, that's what you were saying.
I said in a couple of others.
But predominantly Dogecoin, he said. All right. Yeah, we could talk crypto the rest of the show. We have a whole show for that, listeners. It's called the Crypto Rundown. It's on Monday. I think the folks from Genesis may be on that one on Monday, so it should be an interesting one. There's a lot of vol to analyze. The skews moving, everything's moving out there. So it's very much the volatility story of the day. Let's get back to the more traditional realm of volatility. We were talking about the VIX futures and all the madness that is afoot out there. We've been saying for a while this curve is kind of pricing in something that's a little bit different than what the cash people were reading into the cash, at least. Certainly when it dipped below 20, everyone was saying, oh, well, this is it. This is a sign that the fear is over. And then you look at the VIX futures, it's telling you a very different story. Coming into showtime, obviously this has evolved even since we've been talking, but coming into right before the start of the show, obviously Feb future now off the board. The March future coming into the showtime was about 3.6 points premium over the cash. That's about a 3-point swing. So a big move out there in terms of the March future. April on the board there as well. Obviously, it's been on the board from our analysis. It rotates into our analysis window now. And that's almost 7 points coming to showtime, about 6.75 points. And that kind of gets back to what we were talking about, which is this kind of this plateau that happens a little bit farther down in the VIX futures term structure. And it's still lurking out there. You get past April into May and beyond. May's was at a little bit shy of 29 coming into showtime. And you're talking June and beyond are all about 29 and change. And it stays glued out there all the way through October. So it is a fascinating structure. Again, it's kind of showing that what we're seeing in the cash is not what's going on in the world of the futures, even though those worlds are kind of maybe aligning a little bit more. Russell, you were kind of just talking about this, and I know you did a recent online paper about all this fun stuff. What are your thoughts here on what's going on with the, shall we say, interesting setups out there in VIX futures, Lancer?
It's given you and Mark Sebastian calls this my favorite trade, but it's given you the opportunity to get short by buying puts, and it's continued to give us that opportunity for a couple of expiration cycles now. Looking at April's up around. Last I checked, April had a 29 handle, and it's 8 weeks out. Unless you think that we're going to get another volatility event, there are things that you can do, with the April contract right now. You could basically, it's 28.29 today. Last time I checked it was 29. That was a couple of days ago. But, you can take a look at the options on them. You can maybe take a look at one of the in the money puts that gives you a nice return if we just, if VIX just stays in the low 20s. I've always felt like, there are lots of types of trades with VIX that I don't think individuals should be involved in, but I've always felt like this is a really good trade for individuals, good beginner trade for an individual as well. If you want to force yourself to start watching VIX and the VIX futures from day to day, take a look at one of the in the money puts. The most that you can lose by buying a put. Typically, there's a payoff that would be positive just based on VIX staying unchanged. I actually, normally we don't do this, but I bought the March 30 puts for $6 on on Tuesday or Wednesday, and right now they're at 7. Just because the gap has been narrowing. If you've got a little bit of patience, I think going out to April doesn't seem like the worst idea right now. You could buy, and I'm trying to fumble along and pull up a quote, but you could buy the April 30 puts right now for 590. The break even on that would be 23.10, and VIX is at 22.36 right now. So you got a little bit of a buffer in there. I know it's a long time to wait, but also if you think that volatility is going to start to calm down and VIX is going under 20 in the next couple of months, that's a great opportunity to go trade.
Interesting. Going a little bit beefier on the option side. I like that. A little bit of a flipping the script. We're always talking about, people loading up on out of the money puts in VIX land. We don't talk about the beefier end of the spectrum. Mr. Meatball, if you're still there, if you're not busy drinking the yellow snow, sir, what are your thoughts on what's going on in VIX futures land and perhaps Mr. Rhodes' beefy alternative to those cheapy out of the money puts?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to create some yellow snow on Russell's trade because I like it. So, that is a beefy trade. It is meaty. It's meefy, you might say. But I think that there's some really good payoffs. Some strategies that I really like, it's very similar, a little more complex, would be like, buy the 25-20 put spread in April. Or, a spread I absolutely have on is long April 30 put, short May 30 put. And that's a nice trade that really gives you true, basically creates a future spread, but with a lot less risk than having the straight futures on. And so there's a lot out there in April and frankly, March too. March is still really expensive. There's a ton of opportunity there to trade puts. And one trade that we did see this week, a customer bought, I don't know if you saw this, Russell, a customer bought 100,000 March 18 puts for 10 cents. It's a really inexpensive, interesting play if you think VIX is gonna drop. And it's not that far out of the money relative to the individual, where the cash index is. So that really raised my eyebrow because it was 100% a big institution doing it. Somebody taking a pretty big shot. It was not just like a little retail flow. So that one really raised my eyebrow, and I'm going to be very interested to see what happens over the next week or two with VIX. My gut tells me that there's some downside coming, and I will say that market positioning continues to fade VIX. Right? We have not seen our big call hedgers come back yet, and so you have puts typically outpacing calls in a product where, years and years and years and years, calls would outpace puts by, 1.5 to 2x. So right now, the market positioning is saying this thing is going to go down at some point, and really down.
So your grandmother out in Iowa is not slinging 100,000 lots of VIX puts, Mr. Meatball? What kind of size is your grandma doing?
If my grandma's trading, then I am going to have to go dig her up out of the grave, because I'm going to have to drive out to Pittsburgh and dig her up.
Well, there we go. That got a little dark really quick. Let's keep on rolling then. Out into all things Spikes land. And, of course, Spikes, interesting, we mentioned the size position out there in Spikes options for a while has been that Feb 29 put versus the 32.5 40 vertical. That expired last week, obviously, so that rolled off the board. I think they're waiting to put on some new positioning. The 29 put end of that certainly worked out probably pretty well. Not sure about the vertical side of that, but interesting stuff nonetheless. And then, of course, coming into today's show, not seeing a huge amount of action out there, even though the worm is turning a little bit. Not seeing a huge amount of commensurate action out there in VIX options. Certainly not much when compared to the recent activity we've seen earlier this week, because the ADV is getting pretty firm. It's over 700,000 now, 706,000. It puts it up nearly 40,000 contracts from our show last week. So VIX has been doing some paper this week. Today, not so much, about only 270,000 contracts on the tape today. Before we break down that action, let's break down the top 10 positions. What are the size positions out here in VIX land right now? Kind of getting back to the Meatball's point, the point we've been harking on for some time here on the show, just not many calls to be found in the top VIX positions. And that is once again the case this week. There's only 2 in the top 10. It cost you 132,000 contracts to break into the top 10 in VIX land. That isn't a ton. out there, given the history of VIX, but it's nothing to sneeze at either. That gets you to our first of two calls on the top 10. The March 30s, then number 9, $1.40 of the March 26 puts. Number 8, 144,000 of the March 23 puts. Number 7, $1.48 of the March 20 puts. You see where I'm going with this, listeners. Number 6, $1.48 of the March 18 puts. Number 5, 151,000 of the March 22 puts. Number 4, 174,000 of the April 20 puts, the first and only April in our top 10. Number 3, you have to go all the way up to number 3 to break the 200K level, listener. That gets you to 201,000, so just barely breaking it, of the March 17 puts. Number 2, 212,000 of the March 21 puts. That means our number 1 spot is actually the other call in our top 10, which is kind of interesting. It is 224,000 of the 60 calls. So, yeah, go figure that. Feb double 60 vertical we were talking about not too long ago didn't work out too well. Let's see if our friend piling back in there maybe into the 60s. Let's see if he can have a better return than our other friends who were playing around those strikes last month. Like I said, today, not a lot of paper on the tape. The most active contract out there today, 16,500 of the March 25 calls, 15,900 for number 2 of the March 23 puts, 13,900 of the March 25 puts. Number 4, interesting, 13,700 of the March 80s, 80. So there are some interesting call strikes afoot out there in March. You got to look for them, but they're there. If that wasn't interesting enough, number 5 today, listeners, on an otherwise quiet day, almost 11,000 of the May 110 calls hitting the board today. That is an interesting bit of strike selection out there. I'm going to have to dig into that after the show. Yesterday, a little bit more active paper, 428,000 contracts on the tape. The most active contract yesterday, 25,000 of the March 22 puts, followed by 23,000 of the March 24 puts, 21,000 of the March doubles, 55 calls. Getting back to that interesting strike range for calls in March. Number 4, 20,000 of the March 27s, also calls. And number 5, 18,000 of the March 65 calls. So there are a few upside strikes alive out there in March. Wednesday was one of the more active days of the week. 825,000 contracts on the tape on Wednesday. The most active contract, April 18, Mr. Meatball's favorite strike out there. The puts, 60,500 of those bad boys going up on Wednesday, followed by 55,000 of the March 60s. So calls were pretty active on Wednesday as well. 44,000 of the March 25 puts for number 3, 38,000 of the March 35 calls for number 4, and 35,000 of the March 45 calls for number 5. Start to see an interesting little call strip develop up there in March. Tuesday was the most active day of the week, just a tick over 1 million, about 1.05 million contracts on the tape. The most active contract, getting back to that 18 strike, it was the 107,000 of the March 18 puts. Again, Mr. Meatball's favorite put strike there. Followed by 76,000 of the Feb 21 puts, 69,000 of the Feb 20 puts. Number 4, 48,000 of the Feb 22 puts. And number 5, 37,000 of the Feb 23 puts. So a lot of puts lighting it up. Of course, Monday we were closed for the President's Day holiday. So a lot of that paper from Monday piling into Tuesday as well. And of course, you saw a little bit of a lift there in the morning from the long weekend coming back in. A little bit of it there to VIX land in the morning. But a lot of put action. Mr. Meatball, you mentioned those March 18 puts kind of caught your eye, but also April 18 puts trading pretty sizably out here as well. Any other options trades catch your eye here this week, sir?
Yeah, again, lots of downside positioning and some aspirational call trading. That was really what drove everything.
Yes, that is the case. Mr. Rhodes, before I play that awesome transition that you love so much, anything lighting up your tape in your traditional VIX options this week, sir?
The only thing that, I just kind of want to throw out there, and it's going to take more than 2 minutes to figure out what the heck's going on here, but you had somebody trading those 110 calls. They also traded, I think, and again, there's a lot of forensic work that goes on here. I think that they were combining that with trading some of the 80 strike 80 strike calls that expire, or 80 or 90 strike calls that expire in March and April. So they're doing something where I think they're buying these one options that are way out of the money, and then they're combining it maybe for risk management purposes with shorting, like the 80 and 90 calls and taking in a little bit of premium when they do that. And I actually see a trade all the way up where somebody traded the May 150 calls today.
So today's the day. Today's the day for fun strike selection. You know what else it is the day for, Mr. Rhodes? Since you're back, you're joining us again. It is time, once again, for my favorite transition of the show. It is time for Russell's Weekly Rundown.
Now, Russell's Weekly Rundown.
I love that. I keep that on the board just for the off chance you may show up on the show one of these days, because it is so fun to play. Yes, listeners, it is time once again for Russell's Weekly Rundown, where he regales us for 25 odd minutes with all the action going on in the VIX weekly options. Mr. Rhodes, have at it, sir.
Well, first off, somebody is buying, 3,000, 3,500 or so of the February 24th 45 strike calls. This is not a cover. I can tell you that. It does not look like it's a spread either. It looks like it's just one person coming in and periodically buying them throughout the day, paying between 6 cents and 8 cents. So if something bad's going to happen over the weekend, worse than anything else that we're dealing with right now, that trade looks like it would do particularly well. Let's just say I'm not rooting for that trade. And then also taking a look at the February 24th, the puts. It looks like somebody came in and bought 500 of the 22 puts that expire next week and sold 500 of the 21 puts that expire next week, looking for VIX to creep very, very close to the 20 level, because it needs to be under 21. So I'm sure they'd be happy if it hit the teens as well. A buyer of the March 10th, 28 calls, just an outright trade, buying 250. That looks like an opening transaction as well, because there's not a whole lot of open interest there. But the majority of the weekly's action is focusing in on February 24th right now, next week.
There you go. Getting back to what you were talking about earlier. Speaking of what you were talking about earlier, I was just digging a little bit while you were talking into these May 110s. And you're right. It does seem like at least a good chunk of them, about 6,000, went up against the April 80s. So a bit of a diagonal. It's like paper buying the 80s for 56 cents and then selling the May 110s for a whopping 35 cents out there. But if you're wondering, that's 139% implied vol on those May 110s. That's a bit of a funky diagonal out there with the short leg a little bit farther out. That's an interesting one. Again, looking at how that plateau term structure is out there, it's kind of interesting. Obviously, they did more because there's a total of almost 11,000 of these May 110s have traded today, but at least 6,000 of them seem to be against some other equally outlandish April upside as well. So that's what's going on out there in all things VIX land today. Let's move on out to the product you guys love to fade. It was looking pretty good for the fade coming into the show. Let's see if it's still looking pretty good. It's only ticked up about 1/10 of a point. Talking about everyone's favorite VXX. It was at about 15.10 or so, down pretty much exactly a point from last week. Now it's down about 0.9. So it's got back about 1/10 of a point, still about 15.2 or so out there. So it still has yet another week of healthy, juicy erosion out there. Also good for some decent paper out there. 357,000 contracts on the tape out there in VXX land today. So that's pretty active because the ADV is 362. So we're already pretty much catching up to that ADV. So this little bit of worm turning out there in the vol space is driving some action out there in VXX land. Before we get to what's lighting it up today, let's break down the top 10 positions out there. It's 70-30 puts to calls in the top 10 for VXX. You can find one more call in the top 10 for VXX than you can in VIX land. 26,800 gets you into the top 10 here, and that gets you to the March 16s, our first of 3 calls in the top 10. Number 9, 28,000 of the Feb 15 puts. Number 8, also 28,000 of the March 13 puts. And number 7, 29, almost 30,000 of the Feb 15 halves. These puts go out today. So interesting. Those are looking pretty good. They were looking better this morning, but they're still looking pretty good. Number 6, 38,000, almost 39,000 of the March 30s, our second of 3 calls. Number 5, 40,000, almost even of the March 14 puts. Number 4, 44, almost 45,000 of the Feb 16 puts. Number 3, 46, almost 47,000 of the March 15 puts. Numero dos here, 49, just a tick under 50,000 of the March 16 puts. And number 1 with the bullet, still to the upside, the March 20 calls, 99,000. Jim Carroll on the show last week thought some of his friends out there who were playing in VXX are maybe overwriting some of that upside against their positions. So certainly someone's active out there in the March 20s because they have nearly 100,000 open on that strike. Looking at what's active today, the most active contract is a call. It's the 15 half calls going out today, 22, almost 23,000. Followed by, you might guess, the 15 half put, and you would be correct. That's number 2 with about 19,000. Number 3, 13,200 of the Feb 15 puts. Number 4, 12,000 of the Feb 15 calls. Again, all going out today. And then number 5, almost 10,000 of the Feb 16 puts. So you can see a lot of expiration-oriented action driving the needle today. Mr. Meatball, another week of pretty juicy erosion out there in VXX. When you're not busy dodging the yellow snow, sir, or what's been lighting up your tape and the tape of your crazies out there in VXX this week, sir?
Yeah, and this is what was literally the subject of our VIX Edge our newsletter that we put out every week, every day. We have a week. We are up on the week, like Thursday to Thursday. VIX is up. In that same period of time, VXX lost $1. So it gave away, about 8% of its value. So there is, this is the function of that product. It does what it's supposed to do, but what it's supposed to do a lot of times is kind of lose money. And so we've been building some trades to take advantage of that. It has about a daily decay. Last I checked, 10 cents based on where all the contango is. So, take the VXY, which is even worse.
Yes, UVXY. We'll get there in a second. First, Mr. Rhodes, sir, any thoughts on the ever-eroding product known as VXX, sir?
No, I wonder if we're getting close to that level where people start talking about staying out of the way until we get the reverse split.
It is getting pretty close to that.
It's getting close, and I think a lot of people that play in the options, because they do it so quickly, they say, hey, we're splitting this thing, and then tomorrow you suddenly, if you're short it, you look up and you go, oh my God, it's at 60. What happened? And then you realize that there's a reverse split. But that can wreak some havoc on the option contracts, especially if you're planning on being dynamic and trading in and out of them. So there might be something. I've got like a whole list of teaching assistant projects, and one might be looking at the VXX option volume as it approaches this level where people start to wonder if we're going to see the split. If people just try, personally, I would stay out of the way because of that.
I was just starting to wonder the same thing too. We're getting into that range. It's usually a little bit north of 10 where they start to pull that trigger, and they announce it obviously a little bit before then. Some of our guests have started to speak about it recently. We're starting to hear the chatter out there. So it is getting to that point where it's getting out there in the ecosystem that we are approaching Splitsville. But it certainly, at least for so far, is not hurting the volume out there right now. They're already pretty much at their ADV as of right now. So it's like another robust day for VXX. UVXY, not a product we talk about a lot. Again, it's not my favorite, but again, it's one of the last Mohegans out there. So it's at about 875 right now, puts it down about a point from where it was last show. So well shy of that 10 handle we were talking about in it not too long ago out there. The ADV also pretty firm out there in UVXY. It's 361,000 contracts, up 33,000 contracts just from last week. I think about 20% of that is Mr. Dave Lincoln and his short vol crew over there. Looks like coming into today's show, pretty decent paper. We've got about 265,000 contracts on the tape, it seems like. So yeah, pretty active day out there in UVXY land. Let's just see if anything else has ticked in. Yeah, has ticked up now. I should take that back. It's about 369 now. So you have 100,000 more since we first started talking about it not too long ago here. So a lot of action here in UVXY today. The hot trades, the most active contracts out there right now, the Feb 9 calls going out today. 34,000 of those bad boys, followed by the Feb 9 halves, also going out today. 19,500 of those. Number 3, the Feb 9 puts, 14, almost 15,000 of those. Going out number 4, 13,000 of the Feb expiring on the 26th 9 calls. So they got a little bit of extra time on those. And number 5, 12, almost 13,000 of the Feb 8 half calls also going out on the 26th. Let's do a top 5 out here because we got to keep rolling. The top 5. Number 5 here in UVXY land, the March 9 puts is only one call. Oh, excuse me, one put in all of UVXY. The rest of the top 10 is all calls. It's 25,800 of the March 9 puts. Number 4, 26, almost 27,000 of the Feb 10 calls. Again, those are going out today. Number 3, 27,000 of the March 12 calls. Number 2, 37,000 of the June 5 calls. Interesting. And then number 1 with a smaller bullet, 44,000 of the March 10 calls. Mr. Meatball, have you been looking over there at UVXY land more of late, sir?
Yeah, I've been doing some little out of the money plays in that have worked out because it's just been hot. It's performed like hot garbage. But when you talk about ones that are going to reverse split, I'm surprised they've not announced it on this one. Once it gets below $8, it is going to reverse split 4 for 1, maybe 6 for 1. The more the merrier. I like an expensive UVXY. And do you ever look at how much UVXY, how the split adjusted value destruction of UVXY? It is shocking.
Oh, like the original price and where it is now.
Yeah. Have you ever looked at the wealth destruction? It's like $220 billion. I'm not kidding. $2.2 billion. So if you had put $2.2 billion in UVXY when it started, you would have $8. Think about that, folks.
If you had shorted it, you would have enough money to buy about 22% of all the outstanding Bitcoin.
There you go. It all comes back to Bitcoin at the end of the day. And it all comes back to you, dear listeners, a little bit of the old volatility voicemail.
It's time to share your thoughts and opinions with your fellow volatility traders. It's time to check the volatility voicemail. Make your voice heard by dialing 779-669-4VOL. Posting a comment on the optionsinsider.com, sending an email to questions@theoptionsinsider.com, or posting your questions to twitter.com/options. or facebook.com/theoptionsinsider.
All right, everybody, let's get to it. We have a poll question that went live right before the show. We asked you guys, quite simply, given what we saw last week, VIX closing below 20 for the first time in about a year, what do you think that means for the future? Will VIX close above or below 20 1 month from now? Let's go out to the once and future Dr. VIX first. Mr. Rhodes, if you have a vote, A, share it with us, and then B, more importantly, what do you think our crew, our audience, our crazies are voting for, sir?
Well, I did not vote. I did not cheat, so I haven't looked. I would say 20 is going to still hold for another month. There are all the reasons in the world for it to go below 20 already, and it hasn't done it. So I'm going to defer to the price action there. And I would say I'm in the minority. I would say 3/4 of your listeners believe that it is going to go below. Interesting,
Mr. Meatball. Same questions for you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a majority are going to say it's going below 20, and then you have my personal feeling is, yeah, you know what? It could happen. I could see sub 20. I'd be on board with that. I think it'd be great for my portfolio. I can tell you that much.
I was going to say, I think we know you're on board with that. All right. Yeah, I'm actually surprised because the voting, at least in the early blush, it just went live before the show, so it's still pretty new. But in the early voting here, it's completely the opposite of what Mr. Rhodes was saying. It is 75% in the other direction, above 20. 75.6% of you saying VIX will be above 20 1 month from now. 24.4% of you saying below 20. You still got some time. If you're listening live, get in there. If you're listening after the fact, still get in there as soon as you're listening to this because it'll still be live. We'll have it run through the weekend so you folks can play as well. At Options, the place for all of our fun polls here. Let's go out here really quickly. Let's see what we got here. This is one that came in a while ago. This came from NJ89. He said, looks like the VIX father agrees with you about the neutered SVXY and UVXY, but he also lumps in USO, and he sends a link, includes a link to an article. I think this might have been Barron's, or maybe Bloomberg, about Robert Whaley, obviously the guy who was there in the early days of VIX. There are many folks who claim to be the VIX father these days. It's as they all say, right? Victory has many fathers, defeat is an orphan. But Robert Whaley certainly instrumental in the early days of VIX, and he was talking about what we've lamented on this show many times about, SVXY, UVXY getting effectively neutered in the after hours, really cut the legs out from the options traders on that product, and how that's really not a good thing to do. But he also mentions he also mentions USO, referring back to when they adjusted it post madness last year of the negative period out there. He mentions how when they adjust it, they're altering its profile as they're making these changes. As they're doing, what they're doing is reducing the volatility of the product. That reduces the value of it if you bought an option. And he talks about a paper that he co-authored with someone out of Vanderbilt to talk about this and what's going on in US. So that's an interesting point. We always lament SVXY, UVXY. I don't really lament the USO. I haven't really put it in the same category, probably because I had a pretty dim perception of USO already, and I kind of preferred what they did with that product by pushing it out a little bit. You're right, they did change it though, and it did reduce the vol. He is correct there, but I think for the safety of the product, it was a much saner alternative. They're all over the term structure now, which is a little bit different, but still interesting stuff. I don't know, Mr. Rhodes, you've authored a paper or two in your day. What are your thoughts on Mr. Whaley, a.k.a. the VIX Father's thoughts on not just SVXY and UVXY, but USO, and indeed the impact on vol when these products come out and effectively change the game midstream, sir?
Well, I don't know if they really changed the game midstream. I don't think they're that, I don't think they've had that much of an impact. USO hasn't had that much of an impact for sure. He's been pretty negative on anything that is strategy oriented, that has, a consistent drag to it for some time. And you may recall, he actually tried to come up with a ETP that matched VIX 1-for-1 a while back.
I was about to bring that up, Russell. I was about to bring that up.
Good old VIX up, VIX down. Good stuff.
Yeah, what was the red shares, or what was the?
I forgot the name of the firm, but they also were going to I assume that the NDA that I signed like a decade ago, it doesn't apply anymore. But they were also looking at USO and replacing USO with an ETP that followed the spot price of oil from somewhere. And the assumption on both of them was that you would have supply and demand meet in the middle, and that that it would constantly follow those two different numbers. Problem is, you can't really replicate those numbers with other financial instruments, and you don't have an ecosystem, and the price starts to break down. If I remember correctly, the VIX ETP that they came up with started to trade at somewhat started to reflect more of a VIX future price than the spot VIX.
Yeah, and it had some weird dividend thing. It was really complex. So it's amazing that he doesn't bring that child of his up. He does talk about the VIX.
Yeah, I think that's why he's still fixated on both of those markets, because he thought he had a solution back in the day.
Yeah, he did talk a good game in the early days of that product. It was going to be what everyone's always longed for, the tradable VIX cash, effectively. What it ended up being was a hybrid monstrosity, which you're right, Mr. Meatball, had all sorts of absurd distributions to make the things balance out. I encourage you, if you want some good nighttime reading to put you right to sleep, go read the old prospectus on those VIX up, VIX. That's what it ended up becoming. It ended up becoming two effectively different. It was a nightmare. It just shows the bridge, the chasm between what you want out there, the tradable VIX cash, and what it actually takes to make it come to fruition. It's interesting stuff. But it's interesting. Obviously, Whaley still has the bit in his teeth for this stuff. He's never been one to shy away from, shall we say, an interesting comment or two on the space. It sounds like he's still chiming in. Speaking of chiming in, Studini in our chat room's chiming in our poll. He says VIX stays above 20 in a month, but just barely. Interesting. If you get in there and vote, if you haven't already there, Studini, make your voice heard to the masses. Now it's time for us to make our voices heard on this most difficult, this most dangerous part of the show. It is time for the crystal ball.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, you know what time it is, listeners. It is time to peer into the future, attempt to divine what those fickle vol gods have in store for us for this time next week. Last week on the show, we had Jim Carroll and the Rock Lobster. Jim was feeling what seemed pretty lofty at the time, 22.5. Mr. Rock Lobster was just a tick under the 20 handle. He was scumming me by a quarter of a point to the upside almost. I was at 1975. So we were looking pretty good for a little while there until we weren't. I did tease Jim earlier in the week when it broke through the 20 handle. I said, not looking too good for your crystal ball pick. Because I've learned over time, take your victory when it comes, because the ball market, it is a very fickle mistress, and it could take it away by showtime, which it clearly did, because coming into the end of the show now, we got spikes a little bit north of the 22 handle, almost 22.10, about 22.07 out there, and VIX cash hanging out just shy of the 22 handle, about 21.75. So that puts Jim about 3/4 of a point away on VIX and about 0.4 of a point away on spikes. So outside our 1/10 of a point window of victory, but I'll give it to him because he was the closest by far. Mr. Rock Lobster was several points away, as was I. So we were both feeling the fade, which we had until we didn't. So I'll tip my cap to him. He did chime in. He said the 1997 level we saw last Friday was the fluke of the 3-day weekend. So he was getting pretty defensive already about his pick. But yeah, there is some method to that madness. There certainly was a lot of the long weekend baked into that number. So that means we have a guest who won. So that means I'll open the floor up to the once and future Dr. VIX. I will allow you to choose, sir. Would you like to go first or pick someone else to go first?
I'm going to go first.
All right, have at it, sir.
I would, when I was a regular, I never got to go first.
That's because you kept picking VIX 40 every time.
I know. So, yes, I was the buyer of the 45 calls. I'm saying, I don't know, 47.5. No. Let's say, I'd say 2075. I don't see a whole lot on the horizon next week. The stock market usually does well into the end of a month. Next Friday's the end of the month. So, I don't know, 2075. I still don't think we're breaking 20 for a while, but 2075.
That was it, Hannah. A quick aberration of the long weekend, as Mr. Rhodes calls, or Mr. Carroll calls it, but not going to happen again. 2075 for the once and future Dr. VIX. Mr. Meatball, since your compatriot came in second, I'll allow you to go second. What are you feeling this time next week, sir?
This time next week, I'm going to say 1919.
Ooh, 1919. An interesting year. Not really a good year, but a lot of bad things going on around that time frame. But still, an interesting year nonetheless, and an interesting VIX level as well. That's blowing way through what we saw this time last Friday, which was 1997. So getting through the 20 handle just ever so barely. And of course, we did need a long weekend to help goose that along. All right, so here we are. We got 2075 on the upside for Mr. Rhodes. 1919. That's a pretty wide market for me here to come. What am I feeling? That's a good question. What am I feeling for this time next week? I'm going to say I have a similar thought process to what Mr. Rhodes is saying, but I'm going to say only just ever so slightly. I'm going to say we're going to be at this time next week a little bit north of the 20 handle, 20.15. So there we go. Flirting with it, maybe kissing it, maybe breaking through it for a little bit. But this time next week, going to be back around that 20 level. There's still too much juice out there for it all to come squeezing out. Even though you look at products like VXX, they've already squeezed. So there's our market, listeners. 2075 on the upside, 2015 for me, right? Looking nice there in the middle. And Mr. Meatball looking at a nice dark side, 1919. All right. That music means we've come to the end of another Volatility Sojourn. Listeners, like what you hear? Remember, keep those reviews coming. If you have a question, a comment, a topic you'd like us to discuss on the show, maybe a vol product, hit us up. Love to hear from you guys out there. If you like Bitcoin vol, don't worry. We'll be back talking about that on Monday. All things crypto on Monday. Before we go, let's go back around the horn. Let's start with the once and future Dr. VIX. Sir, if folks are intrigued, they want to check out this epic treatise you just wrote, sir. Where should they go? What should they do?
The VIX Trader's Handbook is available on Amazon, so you can go there to see that. Anything that I write on the volatility markets is in front of the paywall at eqderivatives.com.
There you go. Check him out. If you're looking for his books, it's RHOADS, RHOADS, not spelled like the road you drive on or even the island. He's got his own unique spelling, but you look for that in VIX, and you'll probably find it over there. And Mr. Meatball, while you're not busy dodging the yellow snow, sir, if folks want to reach out to you guys and talk about VIX or UVXY or VXX or even Bitcoin vol, where should they go? What should they do?
Go to optionpit.com, sign up for our newsletters. I'm literally giving out really actionable ideas every day. So if you want to get on top of VIX in a real-time way, come to optionpit.com and subscribe to our VIX Edge.
There you go. VIX Edge, optionpit.com. And you know where to go if you want to learn more about all things spikes. It is, of course, myxoptions.com/spikes. That's the place to go for all of that info I'm talking about here. You get the charts, you get the data, you get the press releases. You even get links to a cool little show called Volatility Views. What more could you possibly ask for from a volatility-oriented destination? Of course, you know where to go to learn about all things execution services and trading technology. MatrixExecutions.com, MATRIX, MatrixExecutions.com. It's the place to go. Like I said, execution services, trading technology, fascinating stuff. You want ideas about flow, what's going on out there in these markets, they'll give it to you. MatrixExecutions.com is the place to go. On behalf of everybody over there in Matrix Land and everybody over there in MyAx Land and the Greasy Meatball and, of course, the once and future Dr. VIX and indeed myself, thank all of you out there for downloading, streaming, subscribing, for listening live, for sending in so many great questions. Keep them coming. We'll see you back here on Monday to kick it all off again with the option block. Get into crypto a little bit later as that as well, all the way through to Friday. Another episode of Volatility Views.
Volatility Views is brought to you by MyAx, one of the fastest, most efficient trading platforms in the world. MyAx is proud to bring you Spikes Volatility products. Spikes options and futures are traded on the Spikes Volatility Index, SPIKE, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction, all for ultra-low exchange fees. It's volatility reimagined. Learn more about spikes at myxoptions.com/spikes. Options and futures involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. Volatility Views is also brought to you by Matrix Executions, LLC, an agency broker-dealer focused on best execution in trading workflow automation. A technology-driven firm, Matrix is led by trading pioneers with decades of experience designing and building best-in-class solutions for options markets. Matrix connects to all domestic exchange venues and multiple international exchanges and serves both institutional and individual clients. For more information on Matrix Executions, LLC, please visit matrixexecutions.com. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's MIXLR.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/The Options Insider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.